in this market, your house might be worth a fortune. But if you haven't touched your legal paperwork since the 90s, then you might be sitting on, I don't know, ticking time bomb instead of a nest egg. And that's what we're going to tackle today. We are so happy, thrilled, excited to have a wonderful lawyer, a Markham lawyer, Keith Nichols, partner of Markham Law, with us today. So welcome, Keith. And we are going to dive into several things: succession plan, real estate law, et cetera, et cetera. So why don't we start with you telling us how is it you have taken over Markham Law? Your dad is still with you, but how did that succession planning roll out actually?
Well, first off, thank you so much for having me on. It's a pleasure. The story of me becoming the succession plan to my father's law firm actually started with me never wanting to become a lawyer and fighting against that my entire life. But my father obviously knew better, which ultimately led to me going to law school, to me graduating, starting and working at a different firm, because my father told me to stay as far away from him as possible, until we both connected one day where I needed a job and he needed another lawyer. And we both sort of looked at each other and went, okay, let's see how this goes. And after that, we worked together for a couple of years before we sat down and seriously talked about succession planning. But that's been over 10 years since, and things are going well. So I am effectively a walking, talking succession plan, a successful succession plan, I should add. So
that's so interesting that you weren't, how do you say that, Carolina? You weren't in the cards, so to speak. Like your dad just kind of like, okay, let's try this out.
And I love that you took the time to work for someone else first, right? Because you don't know what you don't know in what to appreciate in working in a family business, in what to be cautious when working in a family business. And I love the fact that you were able to realize your dad's dream of seeing you a lawyer. My father was a doctor and he tried to push us to do the same, but my brother became a lawyer and I don't know, it changes by the day. So brilliant. I'm so happy to hear a successful succession story. But what I'm excited about is that your dad, and I told you that when you and I first were introduced, because Keith is now becoming one of our subject matter experts for PWT Prime Living and of course PWT Global. And I was telling you that I first met your dad when I was first starting out, like into entrepreneurship. Like, should I do it? Should I not? And you know, I had to restructure things, and somebody referred me to your dad, and I came to see him, and it was about 10, 15 years ago. And I kept kind of like apologizing because, you know, it's another story and you got to be this old to hear it. Anyways, I kept apologizing and your dad was so sweet. He's like, no, you did the right thing. Don't feel bad about starting your business on your credit card. Many people have. You're not the first. You're not the last. He was like the first person that did not make me feel ashamed of how I funded my business at the beginning. So kudos to that. Happy that we're continuing the legacy here today. So Renee, back to you.
So Keith, what has been the most surprising thing about working with your dad, good or bad?
The most surprising thing has honestly been how well we work together. I think that came as a surprise to both of us. As I said, we're both cautious at the beginning working together. There is a certain air about having the boss's son in the office and he's walking around and, you know, everybody is sort of whispering out loud, well, when are you going to take over? Because there is that expectation. And behind the scenes, my father and I were talking about if I was even interested in taking over. But we got along so well from a partnership perspective. We have very similar business philosophies. I credit him with teaching me so much about business and how he ran his practice and what differentiated him from other lawyers in the field. And I just felt that we carry the same philosophy when it came to operating a business, which is why we were able to work together so well. We have never had any partner disputes. We've never had any disagreements. Actually, sorry, that's not true. We've had disagreements, but it was never any spectacular blow-ups or anything like that. We've always been on the same page. We've always had the same goal.
So what would be some of the hurdles that you see, common hurdles that your older clients have as they transition from maybe the family home into their right-sized home?
Yeah, so my father's been a lawyer for over 40 years. He's had a lot of clients that have been with him for that whole time. And as a result, a lot of them are of a similar age. And so we've been with them, I say we, mostly him, have been with them over the progression of their lifetime, buying their first home, having their first family, their first child, selling that first home, and eventually getting to the point where now many of them are looking at retirement. Many of them are looking at right sizing, moving out of their long-term family home, moving into the new home. You know, what are some of the hurdles that I think they face, or the common issues that I see people running into is a lot of the clients get very comfortable with their current arrangements, whether it's living arrangements, whether it's career, and change is hard. And so just having a professional advisor, not necessarily a lawyer, but somebody there to give them guidance along the way, somebody to act as a sounding board and say, hey, I'm thinking about this. Is this the right thing to do? A lot of people don't necessarily have that, simply because they haven't thought about it. And so,
or even if you have it, it's always good to get that arm's length, clear view perspective. Because sometimes your family out of love will either send you or follow you into a cliff, right? So it is always good, especially when it comes to real estate, which is like, for most people, it is their biggest asset that they have.
Or they shoot you down. You have a good idea and they shoot you down before you even get half of it out of your mouth.
But I mean, it's funny. I've been surprised as to how many people will call me up and ask me for just general advice, not necessarily legal advice. Mm-hmm. Keith, I'm thinking about selling the home. What do you think about this? I mean, that type of question has layers to it. It has implications that stretch beyond signing an agreement. Where's
so
your
that's interesting. Can we dig a little deeper on that? Like, what are they wanting from you with that specific question? Because that's very interesting.
I think they're looking for a candid, independent set of advice or opinion, rather, because their kids will have one opinion, mm-hmm. and their financial advisor will have a different opinion if they have a financial advisor. And I think that just having built trust with our clientele over a long period of time, people feel comfortable to pick up the phone and just say, look, I need 10 minutes to just bounce something off you. This is a big life decision. Can you help me out? And, some of the time, yeah, we can, or we do our best to anyways.
So what would be a situation where you would say, no, don't move, silly, stay where you are?
Generally a situation where it involves somebody taking on more debt, especially later on in life. You should, again, in a perfect world, we don't live in a perfect world, but in a perfect world, by that point in your life, hopefully you've paid down most, if not all of the debt. And sometimes people will get the idea of, I want to upsize. I want to move into a bigger house. I've had my eyes set on this cottage property or whatever the case is. Yeah.
Overstretch themselves.
And then all of a sudden they're overstretched financially, and it's going, so in response to that, I say, well, look, do you really want to live out these golden years having that financial stress hanging over you? And then I'll leave it up to them.
Yeah, also with investment properties, I can see that. Do you want to spend years as a landlord, right? Or what, especially with, although we're now seeing a lot more of the reality of the Airbnb trend, right? But so many people jumped onto that Airbnb bandwagon, not realizing the work is work, right? It's not a passive investment that you just collect, dividends on. I want to ask you a question about the demographic, right? So your dad started and grew this practice, and most of the people he served are his contemporaries, right? His peers. Now you're coming in serving the existing book of business, plus new, of course, but the existing book of business. So you are dealing with Gen Xers, perhaps boomers. What are some of the things that you're seeing with fresh eyes as to challenges of the world changing around them, like, with technology, signing documents online, something as simple as that, right? Or e-transfers. We, Renee and I, in the group that we volunteer, we see something as simple as sending a transfer can, be a difficult challenge for people that are not used to it.
Yeah,
what do you do for them? Sorry.
Yeah, technology is definitely a big thing. All industries are moving in one direction, which is more technology somehow equates to everything being better. I think I would disagree with that, but that's the direction that I think we're headed in, at least currently. So with the evolving technologies that are being incorporated into the legal practice, when somebody comes in and says, I need assistance with purchasing a home. It used to be, and Renee, you probably can speak to this a bit better than I can. You'd drive over to their home, you'd go through the agreement with them, they'd sign the agreement, and then you'd go back and you'd submit that to the other side. Now everything is electronic. So certainly there's some hurdles from a technological standpoint. I also think that just everything has become more complex. It doesn't matter what we're doing. Estate planning is more complex. You've got somebody with more assets. So rather than setting up what I'll call a simple estate plan of I leave everything to my spouse, alternately my kids, you're now dealing with a significant amount of wealth, especially in the 55 age plus, one possibly.
They're the only people with money right now.
That's exactly it. And so their estate planning has become more complex because now they're questioning, how do I assist my children? How do I assist the next generation now, as opposed to 30 years from now? What does solving that problem look like? And so that involves possibly making advanced inheritance or gifts. There's potential tax consequences that we need to be aware of when structuring those types of plans. So estate planning is more complex. Real estate transactions are more complex. Just everything is more complicated. And that's why, we say that technology is here to help. And in a lot of ways it has, but in a lot of ways it's made things more complicated.
It's interesting. I would agree with you that it seems like since COVID, the last 5 years, every single real estate deal has a weird surprise to it. It says, where did this come from? Why is this happening? It's very strange. And I'm sure you can vouch for that, Keith, how it's just coming out of the woodwork, these kinds of surprises.
Yeah, I love. Sorry, I love.
You're Go ahead.
The way my father used to describe real estate transactions is, the client would come in, you'd have a coffee, you'd sit there and shoot the breeze for 30 minutes or so, you'd sign a couple documents, and then you bought a house. Now we're scrambling last minute because we're dealing with banks who are delayed and behind on things and getting us financing paperwork. And so everybody's stressed. Everything is coming down to the wire. And it's adding to everybody's everybody's stress level. And as a result, you see, Renee, you're absolutely right. Just all sorts of things that I never imagined I would have seen, I've seen. And I'm sure there's things that I have yet to see that I will eventually come across. So
since the 90s.
for the service providers, I don't think many people appreciate that it's become, because of technology, which they say, for every one problem that technology solves, it creates two. It has become a 24/7 job, it seems, right? Because now transactions are going through round the clock, where before, like you said, when they were done in person, there was some sense of boundary, right? It has become a very challenging. I have friends that are also real estate attorneys, and it is like they'll be having lunch, or and they got to be checking because there's a deal going through, right? And all by phone, all by text, all electronics. So the pressure that it puts on the service providers is something that I don't think the public can appreciate and understand at times. Sorry, Renee, go ahead.
Well, and it's a domino effect. I mean, as soon as Keith, the lawyer, gets the funds have transferred into the bank account, well, then the realtor needs to know, and then the client needs to, the movers need to know, the declutter guy, the whatever, right? It just, the family, it is a domino effect. So Keith, if someone hasn't looked at their legal documents, I mean, you and I, we speak often together at our right sizing workshops, and there are people, when we ask, how many of you haven't touched your legal paperwork in 10 years, 20, a lot of people put up their hand. So what changes, most significant changes, let's start with real estate law, that have happened, let's say in the last decade, that people might not be aware of, that they might want to dust off their legal documents and take a look?
So I'll split that answer into two categories, dealing with real estate and estate planning, because the differences are, well, they're different between the two categories there. From a real estate perspective, if you bought a home 30 plus years ago, you probably have, or at least you think you have, an old paper deed. And I often get clients asking, well, do you need my deed? I've got it locked away in the safety deposit box. And the answer is no, we don't. Everything that has, the old paper deed is a thing of the past. Everything is now stored electronically with the land registry records. And so from that sense, we need less from the clients than I think we might have needed 30 years ago. But now there's more compliance requirements on our end as lawyers when we're facilitating real estate transactions. And that leads to an increase in the amount of paperwork that we need clients to sign. So a common comment that I will get from somebody who hasn't bought or sold a home in 20 to 30 plus years is, wow, I don't remember signing these many documents. Well, it's because we're now under more compliance regulations. We have certain reporting requirements that we have to submit to the province or whoever else. So I would tell clients, brace yourself for just a bit, things to be more complicated, there to be more paperwork, but ultimately we'll be able to get you through the other end.
Yeah, and with cybersecurity, too, like you see it with banks, you see it with everything, the more compliance, more rigorous, verification. So it can be overwhelming for the client, for sure.
Oh yeah, they're being asked to sign. They're being asked to sign all sorts of documents from various institutions saying that we're in compliance with our personal, I'm going to get the name of the act wrong, but the short acronym is the PWT Act, Personal Information Securities Act. Basically, all institutions are now mandating that people will sign documents saying, you acknowledge that we have your information and we're not liable if it gets loose.
Wow. Yeah, everybody's in the cover your button kind of, mindset, for sure.
Well, and not only that, the government wants us all to be CIA agents, like for real estate. If there's any cash that we handle that's over $10,000 in a transaction, we have to give me all your ID. We have to report it. It's insane. Keith, you said that people don't need to keep their deeds anymore. What about their old mortgage documents, or like a mortgage, like a mortgage release? What's that called when you're finished paying off the mortgage? The discharge. Do I need to keep that?
I would strongly recommend that you keep that, because I've run into several instances where people have paid off their mortgage And what banks used to do is they would say, congratulations, you've paid off your mortgage. Here is a physical paper discharge. Go and take this to the land registry office in order to have the mortgage removed from title. And everybody would read the first 2 lines saying, congratulations, you paid off your mortgage, and then out the rest of it. And then 30 years later, when they go to sell the home, the mortgage is still on the property.
Oh, wow.
So we have had instances where people have pulled out these old mortgage documents, and I've gone, I can use that. Even though it's 30 years ago, we can get rid of this old mortgage on title. So Renee, that's a very good point. I don't advocate for throwing things away, but definitely if you're going to start decluttering or getting rid of some of your real estate related documents, do not get rid of anything mortgage related.
You know, it's funny. We're having a paper shredding event. I don't know, in a couple of weeks. I should put a big banner on the truck. No mortgage discharge papers allowed.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Read before you shred. Read twice before you shred. Absolutely. That's smart. And actually probably legally smart to put that sign.
Oh, absolutely.
So you have I love stories. I'm a truth teller and a storyteller. And I love the stories that break the mold. And you and I were speaking, and you were telling me about, I can't remember how it even came up, right? But when we think mortgages and all these things for 55 plus, not so much at the younger end of that scope, but as we begin to be 65, 75, 85, and so forth. You were telling me that you were part of a transaction of a 75-year-old that was able to get a mortgage. And it was just like, how is that possible? And it goes to show you can assume anything, especially now, everything is so bespoke that, it depends, right? Can you tell us a little bit about that transaction? I'm fascinated by it. Can you tell us
absolutely.
the transaction?
I'll start by saying I had a very small role to play in that, and I certainly can't sit here and take credit for that individual obtaining the mortgage. But typically what I find nowadays is if somebody is applying for a mortgage, the bank wants to look at their income, they want to look at their debt. And if you are in the 55, 65 plus year range, your income oftentimes will consist of pension income, which the bank will either not take into consideration or they won't take a lot of it into consideration when determining what you can afford, because that's the bank's concern. Can you afford this mortgage to repay this mortgage that we're about to lend to you? So the individual in question, he was an entrepreneur. He started a business, and he was still working in that business. So when he needed a mortgage, he had income to show. And as a result, he was able to get a mortgage.
I love it.
That there's no age limit. The bank is not going to, or at least they shouldn't, discriminate against purely on age. They can discriminate based on income and debt and all of that other stuff. Mm-hmm. But no, age is not a factor when it comes to somebody getting a mortgage.
And actually, age is not a factor when it comes to many things, especially now, right? When it comes to a myriad of things. So I love when, I hear of people getting their PhD in their 60s or, doing like this incredible, I mean, most of the world is ruled by people over 70 and change, which I think is brilliant because we should not discharge the wisdom that Gen X and Boomers especially bring to the equation. And having people like you, Keith, that are providing that bridge, right? Like you're bringing the new technology, the new way to do business to a community, because you guys are on Main Street, pillars of the community that are able to really be that bridge between the new and the new. Because now being over 55 is the new. That's how we are in Filter, probably in our prime.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's so true. And I know from firsthand experience how wonderfully you can take, Keith, a complex idea and break it into very simple terminology, and you're very good at that. So we get a lot of positive feedback from the clients that we send you. So here's a question, because I'm curious, for families that work with the same, okay, so let's say the grandchildren of your dad's clients want to buy a house. And is there a competitive advantage for a family to use the same law firm that their grandfather or their father used?
I can see it going both ways. I mean, I'll start by admitting my bias that if the grandchild of a client of ours asked for legal help, I would be more than happy to help them. And I'd say, yes, you should come to us and you should use our services because we will do a good job for you. The other end of that, and I have been on the receiving end of these comments, not on the receiving end of these actions, but somebody calling and saying, my father's recommended I go with their lawyer, and not to sound ageist here, but their lawyer is in their 70s or their 80s. And, I don't know that I feel comfortable with this person because I can't relate to them.
Yeah, they may retire any moment, right?
And so I don't think that there's a blanket right or wrong answer to the question that you posed, Renee. I think it's a matter of comfort. And so is there some competitive advantage to having the children, the grandchildren, the descendants of a client continue to stay with their lawyer? I certainly think from a trust perspective, there is, because if that lawyer has been servicing that family for years and decades, then clearly they've been doing so on a basis of trust. This family trusts this individual. But at some point, the descendants may decide, you know what, I'm going to go with somebody more my style, more my
contemporaries. Sure.
Is it helpful that you may know some skeletons in the closet, some family skeletons in the closet that might, add some context to your conversations and advice?
That was a family secret.
I mean, helpful to who? So
True.
I think that's, certainly it provides context to the conversations that we'd be having with our clients of, well, I remember when your father told me this and now you're trying to do that. And I don't know that that's a great idea. Yeah. That I could see being helpful to the child or the grandchild. Other times there might be oversharing of information by the parent when the child was young and maybe not quite as mature, and that could tarnish the character of the person. So it depends.
Yeah. Well, we're so proud of institutions or businesses, organizations, firms like yours. I know here in town, actually, I have friends of mine, the Hunters are also father and son, on Main Street, the dental practice. So to see that still that spirit of, of a town, right? Of connection, of community is absolutely brilliant. So Keith, we'll have you back time and time again because we have questions. And I am going to have to land this episode, Renee. So I think, was there any last question that you had for Keith, Renee?
I had one last question, and maybe Keith and Carolina, you'll want to hear this. Keith, maybe you can give a short answer, and that is, what is the very first legal move someone should make before they put their house on the market?
The legal move?
Did you like that pun?
Yeah. Talk with your family, talk with your professional advisors, and talk with your spouse, talk with your kids. You need a team to sell your home, to buy a home. You need a team of individuals, and so go find your team. That would be the first thing that I would tell people to do before they step into the market in any way, shape, or form. Go find a team of professional advisors.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And just to wrap that up, that would be right. Your lawyer, your accountant, your financial advisor, obviously your realtor, and your any organizing support that you need in terms of clutter and that kind of thing. But yeah, you're right. It definitely takes a team. All right.
Senior
Thank
market strategist. So I'll wiggle myself there into the team. Anyways, thank you everybody for joining us today. Brilliant episode. The thoughts are calculating. And on exiting our episode, I do welcome Keith as one of our presenters and sponsor of our upcoming live event in September 12th, alongside with all of the digital work that we do. But Keith will be there in person. And we look forward to it. Remember to subscribe, sign up to our groups and newsletters and all that good stuff. So thank you, everybody. And until next time, we'll put Keith and all of our contact information in the description. So thank you. Until next time. Thank you, Keith. Thanks, Renee.
you. Bye.